I'm so excited to introduce the legendary Tim Rabolt, and I'll briefly explain to you just how I came across this legend. It was actually, I was brainstorming some ideas of a name of a campaign that I wanted to run and create, which was 25 to Fly. And I was looking up things like 25 to Thrive and just looking at names that I didn't want to cross over somebody else's path. And then in Google, 25 to Thrive came up, and classic me clicks into it, looks into it, and I'm like, oh, this is actually like an organization that I could donate charity to, because it's a basically has a background in recovery and addiction, which is something that sits really close to my heart. And some of my listeners may know, but some of them may not. My brother has a background in all of that area, and that has been something that has triggered mental ill health in myself. And it is something that kind of runs generationally, not just in my family, but in a lot of people's lives. And when we're, struck with circumstances like the pandemic that's currently present, I think it's not that uncommon to the everyday person to hear recovery and addiction and go, oh, I know somebody who's been through that, or I'm going through that. So essentially I sent off an email to this association and I just said, look, I love the message that you're putting out. I would love to get in contact with whoever is running this place, whoever is organizing everything. And straight away, Tim got back. He was right on board, had the best energy, and just said, yes, I'm all in. I want to share. And I just love his energy already for that. And I'm excited to see where this chat goes in general, but I'm going to handball it over to you, Tim, just to give a bit of a brief background as to who you are, what you do, and then I guess the why behind what you do.
Love that. Yeah. Thank you, Lauren. And thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. It was great to connect and be able to chat about everything you kind of just talked about. So currently I'm here in San Jose, California. I was actually born out here, but grew up on the East Coast of the United States in Wilmington, Delaware. And so for me, like my story and kind of the work I do and all of that, how it kind of connects and ties together is that in high school, when I was a senior about 10 years ago, addiction really took hold in my life. And even before that, it kind of goes back to probably when I was in eighth grade, so maybe like 4 years before that. And on paper, everything kind of looked great, like good family, good school, good education, good friends, played sports, all of that. And a series of events between getting kicked out of school and my parents getting separated led to a lot of stuff, like a lot of internal feelings and trauma. And so I ended up getting into recovery from addiction in high school. And when I went down to college, I realized there weren't support services for students. And finally came across that this wasn't just a problem unique to me. It was on college campuses across the country. And so the work we do, the Association of Recovery and Higher Education, we work with colleges that have programs for students in recovery from addiction. Very much like my own journey. We have about 150 colleges that we work with, a couple in the UK, a couple in Canada, maybe some in Australia soon. So it's been great. But yeah, the why, that's such a strong question, like to try and kind of unpack all the why. But I guess when I sit and think about it, it's so other students don't have to struggle. It's like other students get the support that they need to be able to go through college and then be in recovery and thrive, just like we were talking about when you came across the campaign.
That's awesome, Tim. And if you could just speak to the term of addiction, because when I hear that, I immediately get drawn to the thought of drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
Whereas I think addiction can really spread into a variety of different areas. And I could even see it in social media and food addictions and certain things like that. So I'd love to hear both what your actual addiction was, and
Mhm.
then also how you define that for your people that you educate and just identifying that within them.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Yeah, so for the work we do, the specifics are generally more around substance use, so drug and alcohol addiction. And for me, that's definitely what pushed me to the point where I needed recovery. I needed treatment, and help in that sense. But the students we work with, and including myself, like very much my own journey, addiction is a broader term, like you're talking about. Like it's a disease that I'm living with, like a condition, like a medical condition in that sense. And so it kind of, we talk about how it manifests itself, like how it presents itself in different areas of life, whether it's through games or through spending money, or it might be an eating disorder or self-harm, or all sorts of different process addictions that can kind of result from this larger addiction overall. So for me, it was specifically in college, or in high school rather, drugs and alcohol. So it was, smoking weed, it was drinking any kind of alcohol I could get my hands on, it was prescription pills. And, I was fortunate that I got into recovery at 18 because I was just using whatever was put in front of me. So if I didn't find recovery at that point, I got into college, I probably would have turned to a lot more serious substances that may have taken my life from me, like it's taken so many others. So for me, it was mostly the drugs and alcohol, but I could totally see how it resulted in like video game addiction, and
Mm.
like addiction to like working, like workaholic type effects, and different things like that. So yeah, and even today, like being in recovery for over 10 years, there's still things that I can catch myself kind of going down a path and having to like recalibrate.
100%. And I think there's definitely like, I think the word addiction, and there's certain word connotations that we have a negative association with, but in terms of like having an obsession or like really just applying discipline to an area, we can be addicted to our health and really apply our knowledge and all of that
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
way as well. So it's not always like a bad thing. I think particularly with having an obsessive or an addictive personality, which I'd probably include myself in there, but switched over to something more like yoga and wanting to serve people in healthier ways, is like a healthy addiction to that topic. But I've also been at the extreme of that, of doing too much. And so it's always, finding yourself, where am I sitting on this pendulum? And
Yeah.
I'm sure that's within your program of just kind of identifying where people are at and going, look, it's like mental health doesn't ever get solved. I think you just get more tools in your tool belt to be
Yeah.
able to go, that's a trigger. I'm not going to hang out there. I'm not going to associate with that person because it's going to make me do this behavior. Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I think that like when you talk about addiction or obsession, or different terms that are similar or synonymous, with that comes this assumption that there's a negative consequence because of it, right? There's something that we're neglecting to hold this addiction or obsession or compulsion up above other things in our life that are also important, versus what you're kind of talking about, I think more of like drive, or like tenacity or grit,
Yeah.
like pushing
Hustle.
pushing forward and thriving. Yeah.
Yeah. What was your actual like catalyst moment? Because I think I've
Mm.
explained this in other podcasts where I just go, life is a series of science experiments where we're one person here and then we need another substance and it kind of interacts and causes an explosion that we either go in one direction or another. And so I'm curious to see where you hit either your rock bottom, or if it was like something somebody said, or whether it was something that happened to a friend when you're like, holy shit, like I need to stop doing this and look for something else.
Yeah, I guess I had like 3 of them, if that's okay.
Mm.
Like, I'll do them quick,
Yeah.
but it was like a series of
Go for
catalysts. Like, the first one was in February of 2011, where it was, we're watching American football, so like the Super Bowl, and it was, the big party, and I was with all my friends, and everyone was, drinking and smoking, and there was food, and I was in this room of all, the people I was close with, and I felt like the only one in that entire room. I remember just, like, sitting there with everyone there and felt like the only one in the room. And then wanting to cry on the way home that night, and I couldn't. I was like too numb to even to cry. And I woke up the next morning crying, and just knew that I had to do something different. So like that was the first one. And then about 2 months after that, I went to prom. Kind of like, I don't know if folks are familiar with the same thing over there, but like the big signature kind of like dance, for the school. And I went to prom for the school I got kicked out of 4 years prior to that. And at that point, I was already in treatment, trying to stay sober, and I used again that night, thinking it was going to make everything perfect, and it ended up being just a nightmare of an evening. And that was the last time I used, was that night. So that was kind of the catalyst that, like, I thought that I could use substances to make like the perfect night, and it
Mhm.
was the opposite effect. And then the third catalyst was actually in college with maybe 8 months sober. It felt like everything that could go wrong was going wrong. And I actually contemplated, taking my own life as a first year student. I remember on that Friday night, like sitting in bed, planning it out, just thinking that it's all done. And there was this one voice like in my head that was essentially saying, like, go through this right now so someone else hopefully doesn't have to later. And that was probably the biggest catalyst of them all, was like whatever happened, that was like, go, like, figure it out now, and like you're gonna be able to help someone else.
Wow, I just have goosies all over. That's
Yeah.
yeah, it must. I still think like those kind of stories that hit you in the feels, they don't get any easier to tell. Like I'm sure that
Mm.
still triggers some sort of, like, you've
Yeah.
been through so much growth. And for me, when I hear that, I'm sure you've got family, whether it's, your mum and your dad, but I'm not sure if you've got brothers and sisters as well. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I'd just love to hear your journey and your relationship with them, and whether that was or has been impaired, and whether you've kind of recovered that, and where you're at with
Yeah.
it. Because I just have so much um compassion for the family side of it as well.
Yeah, like, we throw that recovery term around, and it's, you just think, okay, you recover from the disease of addiction or something. But yeah, there's so many other like components to the recovery process. Like you just talked about, like recovering relationships
Yeah.
with folks that have, it might have tailed off a bit, or what I've started to realize more recently too is it wasn't as much now of recovering from the disease as it is like recovering like your true spirit, like who you're supposed to be, and like finding who your authentic self really is. And that's been the biggest part of the journey in some ways. But the piece about family, it's all about like mom and dad for me, because I was very close with them both growing up, and it just it pieced off. They got separated, but my relationships with them pieced off, and the disease like fed right into that. And they were instrumental in me getting help and staying sober while I was in high school. Obviously, still living with them, and having them take me to meetings or to treatment or detox or things like that. But then even now, like, be able to go home and like see them, and all these years later, it's like every year I get closer with them, which is great. And then I think that's been one of the best parts, is that it's recovery is allowed for that to happen in like a really authentic and like impactful way that I don't know if I ever would have, like, if I never even used and never found recovery, I don't even know if it would be like this, so that's been powerful.
And your biggest lows lead you to your greatest highs, I think, as well,
Right.
in terms of like the growth element. And yeah, I know that I get super proud of my brother, and in ways that he shapes up. And at times, where when it's not perfect, or times there's relapse or whatever, and
Mhm.
there's been times that I haven't handled that maturely, or I haven't really known what to say. It's really interesting talking to someone who has kind of gotten through that, but can still relate to that story that existed at that time. But I think the
Yeah.
most amazing thing is to allow yourself to not believe in that story that you've been telling yourself. It was just a part that isn't your true essence. And like when I look at you and I see you there, and just like you're just like the biggest cuddly bear ever. And we're all really just looking love and
Yeah.
belonging. And so those ways that we look for it through addiction or through whatever it is, we think we're getting it until we realize that there's just something so like empty inside. And so until you feel that feeling of like, I want more, I want connection, there's kind of no hunger to go looking for, you know, the work that you do today. And I would love for you to speak to the actual recovery association that you work for, and like what the process of that's like. Is it all inclusive of like detox from the beginning, or where you're taking these people in from?
Yeah. So the best way to kind of look at it is, you know, like there's this continuum of care. Is that what kind of we refer to it? Where, you know, on the front end is like prevention, like trying to ensure that individuals are not, you know, over or misusing drugs and alcohol, preventing overdose deaths, preventing like recurrence of use. There's like prevention piece. Then kind of in the middle is that treatment and detox part that you're talking about. So when someone needs a certain level of care, you know, they're actually going to a facility or getting professional help. Then we're kind of on the end of the extreme, where we call it recovery support services.
Yeah.
So that's essentially, you know, they've gone through, it's almost like aftercare.
Yeah.
So one analogy that's sometimes helpful for people is like treatment and detox is kind of like if you had to get surgery on your shoulder, it's like the surgery, but we're kind of like the physical therapy, and everyone might need different physical therapy and how that would kind of look like. So it's really, you know, students that are, you know, early in recovery for the most part. Sometimes they've had, you know, some time under their belt, and they're involved in these programs at the universities, and they're getting, you know, academic support. They're getting recovery support by like going to meetings and hanging out with other students in recovery, um, doing events together, going out into the community, maybe living together. They have space, they have support from the university staff. So it's kind of like, you know, there's this overall college experience, and then they're living this college experience for students in recovery within this larger college experience, if that makes sense. So they're getting this like wraparound support to make sure that they can stay in college, do well, and sustain their recovery.
I feel like you must get so much job satisfaction out of what you do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. It's very, yeah, absolutely.
It's such a beautiful way to share your light. And I think, you know, if we could all find our own story, and this is really the puzzle piece, like you were asking, how did this podcast come about? And I think so many people that I tend to draw in are the ones who don't want to talk, or the ones who don't think they're interesting. And I'm like, I'm going to find something interesting about you, because it's not my life. And I guarantee you, I'll find something in there that's like, that will make you smile, or make you bring back a memory that, you know, you kind of forget how much you do, right? Like from primary school to high school, to the little things you might have done with your parents, if you had a good relationship there or a relatively good home. It's like, I've actually done a fair bit. And I don't know what happens in us when we forget to start playing and connecting to that playful side of ourselves. That's like, oh, the true essence. When we're born, we're just pure and innocent, and we are joy, and we have a unique purpose here, whether we like it or not. It's just too hard to fathom that we're here by coincidence. So yeah, so the fact that you can have that ability to turn your greatest low into your greatest high is like, it's such a beautiful thing to do. And yeah, I know we spoke about you coming over. I can't remember exactly when it was, if it was October or November, to Australia.
Yeah, November. I can't remember the exact dates, but yeah, we'll be out there in Sydney for you know, 4 nights or so.
Because you know what is really cool? I got the dates for when they want me to work back in Tassie just for some massage therapy for a private retreat. And I thought it was going to be October, November crossover, but it's like the 9th of November to the 23rd. So if it's any time like before then, please let me know and we'll catch up. I'll fly over to Sydney before I go to Tassie and catch up with you for a coffee, because that'd be epic.
Yeah, it's November 10th to the 14th. But then
Oh,
it's Auckland before that, November 6th to the 10th in New Zealand.
well, I've always wanted to
And
go
then
to New Zealand. Who knows what'll be in the woodworks by then. So I'm all
yeah,
up for
yeah, I'll
adventure.
keep my I'll keep my fingers crossed for that. That'd be special.
Awesome. So is the plan with that, with you coming to Australia, to talk with expanding it here, or is that just to connect with other team members, or is it completely separate?
Completely separate. Yeah, this trip it'll be I'm gonna be married in 6 months, so it'll be honeymoon.
Amazing, dude.
Yeah, yeah.
How that, are you getting married in New Zealand or in
No,
California?
no, that actually in Wisconsin here in the States. And then that'll just be a couple weeks afterwards. We'll go on that. We're gonna go New Zealand, Australia, and Fiji.
Dude, and you
Yeah.
are most welcome anytime you're traveling. Like, if you come to Australia and you hit up Western Australia, just
Hmm.
honestly send me an email or a message. And my sister and her partner also are just legends, and we'd love to just hang out and chat, because you just got such a beautiful soul.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. And back at you. You do an excellent job with this. So how far are you from Perth? Is that how you say it?
Yeah, so look up Secret Harbor. We're like 5 minutes from the beach. I'm such an ocean baby that it wasn't a hard decision to move here when they said your room's set up and it's like 10 minutes from the beach. And I love the name of the suburb as well. It's like, that's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. That wins the award for like coolest name. Like you live in Secret Harbor. Yeah.
Totally. I think I've lived
Yeah.
in like the coolest places. In Tassie, I lived in Table Cape. Then I bought a house in
Nice.
Penguin. And I was like, every time I'd call up somebody about like the water bill, they're like, "Oh, what's your address?" And I'd give the suburb. They're like, "Penguin, that's so cute." And I'm like,
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
heard this like 20 times. It's not cute anymore, but yes, I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah. So how far is that from where you were now? Like how far is the flight?
To Tassie, it's about 4.5 hours.
Okay. So
Yeah.
that's a pretty good. It's like across the country almost in in the United States. So yeah.
Yeah. Australia is so bizarre. Like, you could be driving for like 20 hours and be like, "Oh, I'm still in the same state. Awesome. There's still
Yeah.
more kangaroos. Amazing." Um,
Yeah.
have you been before?
No. No, my partner has, but I have not. So I'm just counting down the days till we're there.
Yes. Oh, back on topic, because I just feel like, yeah, you're just such a dude that we could totally hang out.
Oh,
But
for sure.
as
Yeah.
for like all of the stuff that you do, in terms of like recovery and addiction, I know that it's a common thread that people who have been through that still attend like AAs or their meetings or recovery sessions. And I would
Yeah.
love to know what your daily schedule looks like for you that helps you stay in balance and helps you keep in check, especially when you're dealing with people who may remind you of yourself or trigger something where it's like, "Oh my God, I need to be grounded before I give you advice."
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good question. And yeah, and everyone's answer to that looks so different. I don't know if there's a daily schedule as much as there is a weekly one of like what I want to try and get in a week. So like on Mondays, for example, I joined like an afternoon meditation meeting, which I find really helpful. We just go through different meditations and then kind of have like open sharing. So I always find that great. And then like on Tuesdays, I'm always talking to this one woman who's been very influential for me as like a mentor. She's actually officiating our wedding, but she works in the same space, like collegiate recovery. And so I talk to her on Tuesdays and, always catch up about just like life stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not just surface level or small talk, but it's like how we're being better human beings. So like that always helps quite a bit. Then um towards the end of the week, I do have like a 12-step sponsor, Narcotics Anonymous instead of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I meet with him and we talk and connect and go over step work. which is always helpful, and just kind of talk about like recovery specifically, like what kind of principles we're practicing, and what we're trying to work on. Like, right now, recently we're just going through the 10th step, which is around like taking personal inventory, like regularly checking, do I need to apologize? Like, was I wrong and I need to admit it? Did I hurt someone that I need to, apologize to? Things like that.
Mm.
And then every Friday I join this like all recovery meeting where it's kind of just discussion based of, a certain topic. Like the topic on this past Friday was decisions, and I like that meeting. And we always close out the meeting with like a positive personal statement, like something you're grateful for, looking forward to, a positive affirmation. And then in all the in between time, I try and just work on like being better, like not just professionally, but I'm part of a couple book groups or working groups, to work on being like a better man, or different equity and justice work to understand kind of the privilege I have as a um, um, white cisgender heterosexual male. Like there's a lot of benefits I've had throughout life. So there's all these different kind of components that add together like throughout the week or throughout a month that kind of make up like my personal recovery program, if that makes sense.
Definitely. I really like that weekly approach because I think, especially to begin with, a daily practice can sound really daunting to a lot of people who a common thread is like, I don't have time to fit that in. And, it's like if you can fit it into little portions of your day, and it doesn't mean that you have to sit there or write that. It's like you can literally be out with your partner or seeing your family and just be like, oh, I'm grateful for this. And just get in the habit of like, what am I looking forward to? Okay, I'm looking forward to sleep, or I'm looking forward to cooking my breakfast and having time to myself,
Yeah.
or patting a random dog when I'm walking to the bus. Like, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to have a big trauma story to be special. You don't have to have
Yeah.
a big moment to be a great person. I just think it's those little things that we do, like you said, to be a better man, to be a better son, partner,
Yeah.
like person. And that's going to ultimately be the role model that you set for not just the people in your recovery program, but the person at the grocery store who's like, he's a
Yeah.
really kind person, and they won't know you from a bar of soap. They won't ever probably get to know your story, but that's okay because it's how you're trying to make your karma moving forward. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's really, really cool. How do you find, like, I guess when the people are coming in, do a lot of them stick with it, or do you get like a lot of
Mm.
repeats coming through, or people who break out of it because it's too much?
Yeah, that's a tough question.
Mm.
So we don't work with the students directly, like our association, but we represent schools, and all the staff that work at those schools are working with the students directly. And I would say the majority, the students that are coming in being part of the programs, they're mostly sticking around.
That's
But I think it all depends on this, like what they're getting, like what kind of support that they're getting. If it's a program where, the university takes it really seriously, and they can a second a student's coming in, they're talking to them, figuring out, what kind of care they need, if they need a different housing accommodation, getting them all the information on different meetings on campus. All the students are really welcoming and like want to hang out with them and kind of make them feel like they're a part of the group. When all that happens, that student's going to stick around. But,
Mm.
I remember when we first started our program, when I was a student in Washington, D.C., at the George Washington University, tons of students came in and left. And I don't blame them at all. It was, the limitations of our group, and, the point that they were at which they were kind of coming in. So it's tough. But the students that are involved stick around more so than like an average person, those coming in and out of meetings. So it's good that we have some research on that and like their success in that sense. So it's a kind of a tough answer to give, but for the most part, the folks are sticking around.
I'd love to know your viewpoint on college, and because I don't know, I feel like
Hmm.
recently my I appreciate school and I appreciate having gone to university. And I wouldn't say if I was to do it again, I'd do it differently because I ultimately end up me right now. But in in looking at the structure of a lot of universities, schools, and colleges these days, I don't say I would necessarily agree with the way that teaching is structured. And I wondered how much of the college part of it for your clients and your students is like a practical kind of course, or if it's academic, or
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, and I will say, to preface it, that this emphasis on university and the college experience in the States that is more so present here than other countries for sure. And it's probably an overemphasis. There's too much of this connection that young people are forced into thinking that, if I'm not in like a 4-year university, then I'm not going to be successful in my life. And then a particular kind of school too. Like they think they have to be in this kind of school. And if they're not going to go to that school and they go to this one, then everything is it's over. And that's not the case at all. So I think, as far as like the take on the college experience and everything, it's just so personal, right? Depends on, what kind of point you're at. If it's really just about the education, if it's really just about the education, I think so many more people should be going to community colleges or different schools than like maybe a 2-year school and or a trade school or different things like that. And then I will say though, there's a lot of benefit of the kind of like the 4-year experience to learn how to live independently and connect with like a community. And like I'm really grateful for my experience, but it's not for everyone. And it's not as critical or important as kind of the media or our society has kind of made it seem. So it's kind of like two sides to the coin, if that makes sense.
It does. And it makes me want to bring up something that I read in my journal the other night, or notes that I'd taken somewhere, that, if people that you resonate with or who listen or watch this, it's to do with success and fulfillment. And I wrote it down as success is getting what you want, but fulfillment is giving what you've already got. And I think that was such a beautiful way of looking at it, because so often we're looking to things like, I want to be like that person, or I don't have enough skill to do this. But it's like, you've lived through something and you've already got that to share it. So if you can do that in a meaningful way, I think it speaks true to me. I feel fulfilled in being able to share what I've already got versus what I continue to consume.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's where like social media has been a challenge because you you see this image of what you start to get this distorted image of what life should be, right? Everyone's sharing all these like accomplishments. Like everyone's all, they're gonna post like the great stuff, so everyone's life looks like it's amazing, and then you could be, sitting here during the pandemic at home alone, thinking that you're not successful or important or valued or have worth or something because of what you're seeing on social media. But yeah, you're totally right. Like that distinction between success and fulfillment is huge. And also that like success is so personal, but we make it seem like it's about money and fame and connection. But it's so much more intimate than that. And you can't define it in those terms. And I think that's, you always hear these stories of, you know, older folks on their deathbed or at the end of their life, and they always have these regrets of putting too much time into their job or and not enough time into like their friends and family, and like that's seems to be more of the formula for fulfillment, is like relationships and human connection. And you know did you leave the world better than you found it?
Isn't there like a Harvard study around that where it went on for like 8 decades. It would be like 8 decades now. When I was watching it, I think it was like 6 or 7 at the time, where the happiest people and the healthiest people were the ones who had love and community, had
Yeah.
nothing to do. Like, I mean, I'm sure they were looking after themselves in other ways, but again, it's coming back to this belonging. And you can choose social media to connect in a really meaningful way, like what we're doing now, or you can really
Yeah.
get lost in the sea of it. And I've been on both ends where I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, I know I'm seeing a snapshot of someone's life, but it can instantly make you feel like you're not doing enough, like you'll never be enough. And it's this sense of lack that kind of puts you into, again, the loneliness state. So would you be able to speak to, like, obviously you're not always like, I'm assuming you're human like all of us, in terms of going through
Mhm.
ups and downs in life, of like, yeah, life's really good today, and then other days you just go, I'm not feeling in the flow. Like, how do you navigate through that when you feel triggered
Mhm.
or you feel low?
Yeah, that you have such good questions. I guess for me, I try and before I got into recovery and even early in recovery, if there's this chart where it's like really happy, like really excited and life is great, and then there's the lows where it's like depressed and um extremely upset or angry, like that kind of, I was this all the time. It was up and down. And I try so hard now to like this. It's not going to be a perfect flat line, but when I have those excited moments, I try really hard not to let it be this like pink cloud, forget about everything else, like just focus on how great this is, post it on social media, call everyone up, you know, don't go all the way up here, because if you're up here, you're going to fall down, and once you're falling down, it's going to be much easier to keep going, so I try and do that. And then with the dips, uh it's much harder to, if you're this is flat and you're here versus down here out of the screen, it is much harder when you're out of the screen to come back up. So what I try in those times is to fall back on those tools you're talking about in the beginning,
Yeah.
of like what's going to be helpful to get back to that baseline. Is it going to be going for a walk? Is it going to be a recovery meeting? Is it going to be reading? Is it going to be um, just like going to a different room? Is it going to be watching Netflix? Is it going to be writing? Is it going to be doing work or emails, eating, cooking something? Like, all those different things that are pretty like major components of life itself to balance back out. So I think that's kind of what my answer would be is, don't go on the extremes, because that's not sustainable. You'll get burnt out and exhausted. For me at least.
Yeah, totally. And I think a lot of us live in an extreme kind of world where it's like, wow, or nothing at
Yeah,
all, and
yeah.
then and then nothing at all. Um and do you have some sort of like warning sign within yourself that you feel that coming on? And is your
Mm.
partner aware, or is your family aware of like how to communicate with you in those times of like, we don't communicate? Or is it a matter of going, hey Tim, like, how you going, do we need to go for a walk? And in your head it's like, okay, I can see you're seeing I'm low. And it's like a nicer approach to it, because I've had the
Yeah.
experience where, people can say to me, oh, you don't look very happy, or what are you on your period or something? And it's like, instantly that can just, it can make you go from rage to someone actually just going, hey Lauren, like, how are you going, do you need some time alone? And that approach is like, I want to tell you what's going on, versus feeling this attack when you're already feeling low and vulnerable.
Yeah. My for your question, my partner 100% like understands it,
Cool.
knows like the right things to say, like has that like the emotional intelligence and like fitness and capacity to see it, which is great.
Yeah.
It's definitely more so like on me, like internally, when it's not letting myself get too up. Like there's no one, there are people, if I was seeing them more in person, I think that might be able to give a little nudge, like, okay, bring it back down a little bit. but that one is more of like my own kind of internal measures, or not measures, but like internal like fail safes to make sure I don't go all the way up here, because what goes up is bound to come down, type
Mm.
of thing.
On the contrary to that, in terms of like, how do you celebrate and what does bring you joy that doesn't allow you to get too elevated, but still lets you, sit in that moment of joy, whether it's like, oh, I feel
Mm.
really good about that, or that compliment felt really nice, but you're not getting carried away with it, but you're allowing yourself to receive.
Mm. Yeah, it's a good question too. I don't know if I have a good answer for it. It's weird. It's probably not the same as most people. Like I think a lot of people, they um big celebrations, right? Like, or it's more visible, like what you're asking. They'll do a party, or for their birthday, or for something big, or like a big social media post, or you know um things like that. But for me, it's more simple. It's like, you know uh comfort food, like a meal that I really wanted, or sit and watch a movie that I wanted to watch, or
Yeah.
um like call my mom and talk about it.
Yes.
Or it's like really like these small things that I'm already experiencing day to day, that I'll just do it a little bit different, and can like just sit with it
Mm.
and like process it. But yeah, like the celebrating, or the um acknowledgement of some of those things, like for me, it's, I don't know, it's just so much more of like an internal celebration than it is like something visible or external, if that makes sense.
Completely. And I think I just unlocked the code to any introvert or extrovert. Like that question, I'm extroverted in this kind of work and in any work that I do, and I genuinely love people. But if you were to ask me how I celebrate, it's curling up on the couch with a doco and ice cream, or like, like not doing it
Yeah.
all the time, but I'm a very one-on-one person. I get very exhausted if I have to kind of cater superficially to a
Yeah.
group. I'm like, give me deep and one-on-one, and I can sustain that energy like all day, son. Like I can keep going. But yeah, it's a very, I love that study side of humans, because I learn more about myself as I hear your story. And I think we all see parts of ourselves in different people that we're either, drawn to, or that triggers us, which is, essentially a part of us that we're disconnected to or have shut down. Um,
For sure. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And yeah, and even like with this, I had, there's these little like, they're dark chocolate like coconut things, and I like put it on the side. I was like, oh yeah, when this is done, like that's how I'll celebrate being, you know, done on, yeah. So it's like things like that. I'm like looking at that out of
Oh,
the side of my, it's little stuff. Yeah.
can you actually send some over? They are like two of my favorite flavors, plus peanut butter, and we will be best
That
friends.
that's literally, we bought, there's the same
You better
brand.
not
There's
have
two.
Reese's there. I swear to God, I will slap you in
I
the face.
do. I
No.
literally have, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, big peanut butter household.
Yeah, okay. You are definitely my brother. I know we don't look the same, but we can hang out forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
might just want to tell your wife that you've like adopted another child, and she will be eating all
Okay.
the chocolate in the house.
Nice. Nice. I'll relay the message.
Oh my gosh. We will definitely have to cross paths in person. I look forward to meeting your partner, because she'd have to be a legend as well to come across
Oh,
you.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So awesome. Who are your teachers, Tim? Like, who would you
Mm.
consider the people that have been there from the beginning, like right through? And I'm sure people have kind of fallen off and fallen away for the right reasons. And then I'm sure
Mm.
there's been like challenging relationships that you haven't wanted to let go of, that have kind of, you might have burnt bridges there, I'm not sure. But who are the people that you look to for solid ground to go, hey,
Mm.
I'm here and I want to get there?
Yeah, there's a few that come to mind. Like in the early, when I like first got into recovery, it was actually my English teacher at the time. I had him for 2 years in high school, and he taught me a lot, obviously with the English course, but he also helped me think about the world in a way that I hadn't prior of in terms of like critical thinking, like this fact exists and like this exists and like how do they relate, like that type of
Mhm.
strategic thinking or critical thinking, however it makes sense. So like Dr. Chipman was his name, and he was that catalyst I talked about, that first one where I felt alone in the room, and then the next morning I woke up crying. I went right to school, went right into his office, closed the door, and broke down to him. He was the first person I told about everything.
Oh,
So yeah, so he taught me a lot. And then after I saw him, I this therapist for years who taught me an incredible amount um, about, I don't know, just navigating like life and relationships and addiction and things like that. So he was great. My mom and dad, of course. I think my dad almost a little bit more so, just because of how much he's taught me, like different things around being a student or being a employee or being a son, and things like that. And then I talked about that mentor I talk to every week on Tuesdays. Her name's Patrice, the one who's going to officiate the wedding, and yeah, she's probably taught me more than almost anyone um, about like the work we do, for sure, but then also just like how to wake up and like be a good person and then go to bed and have a plan to do it again tomorrow.
something that I'm really intrigued by with you that I haven't really observed or maybe noticed in other people is that you have a really healthy balance between the masculine energy and the feminine energy, and like drawing
Mhm.
upon them for who you need at different times. And when thinking back to like your teacher, Mr. Chipman, and it's like in hindsight, you think, man, I didn't even know how much they must have gone through to have been that person for me. Like, I'm not sure if he
Mm.
ever shared any stories with you, but for people to have compassion, I genuinely think they've had some level of experience, whether personally or whether it's, his
Yeah.
kid or his family. And it's like, wow, if
Yeah.
I could go back and thank them genuinely, that would be so epic.
Yeah, yeah, and I haven't talked to him in a while, but now you're saying it, I feel like I should send him an email again. But I did, like, stay in touch for, like, a handful of years, and even, sat and talked with him maybe, like, 3 years, 2 years after the
Mm.
fact, just to say exactly what you were saying, like, I don't know what he thought on that day or during those weeks as I was navigating, like, how to survive, but yeah, like, if it wasn't for that, who knows what would've happened.
And older people with beautiful wisdom like that, I think something as to why I think most of my friends and mentors, they're all like a fair while older than me. And I think it's because it's the
Yeah,
grace that they hold in their wisdom, where they cannot speak and they can be love and they can be kind, and you can tell them, like, you could say your worst thing and they'd still just be there like, I can see that you're a good person and you're going to get through this. And they don't even say that, but you just feel it from them. Like, for some reason, I feel safe and I feel like I'm going to be okay. And I aspire to be an old person like that. Like, it
yeah.
excites me to get old.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and even so, as long as I can remember, maybe the past, like, you know, 10 years especially, but, like, everyone in my life, closest friends, closest mentors, people I work with directly,
Yeah.
I'm the youngest every single place. Even in my family, like, that wasn't, by choice, obviously, but I always have gravitated towards the older crowd, I think, because of what you're describing exactly.
Totally. And you've got that old soul personality as well. And I think,
Yeah, I hear that. Yeah.
be like, oh, it's, I love it when the oldies say that. It's just like, okay, I can actually deal with cups of tea and not clubbing ever in my life again. Like, I am
Yeah.
down to disco with you. And old people are fun. Like they're libraries. I just think, because I love
Yes.
reading and I love learning, and I think, well, why don't we extract as much out of them as we can, or just be with them to see what they see, and gosh, they've seen a lot of changes. Like, people think COVID's this big thing. I'm like, man, they have seen like the computer come about, they have seen bloody iPhone, and they're
Yeah.
still owning it life. Like, some of them are better than us at it. Like, I just go, wow, you're amazing.
Yeah. Well, I think like at least what I found with young people, like people like my age or a little younger, is there's so much more, and like social media is push this to share experiences and like feelings, well, not even feelings, but like surface level experiences and emotions, versus older folks I found have become over time much more attuned and this ability to share stories. And
Mm,
that's so much easier to connect with a story.
it is.
You just you go right past the surface level.
Is that something that you do with, or like plan to bring into the work that you do, like just
Mm.
storytelling? Because I personally love stories. I just think that they are such, like you said, there's such a deeper way of connecting. And instead of giving facts and figures, it's like, give me stories and I can link those dots in that way. And maybe that's my type of learning. Other people probably
Yeah.
learn quite factually, but yeah, stories are beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. We don't have like a certain program for it, but now that we're like talking about it aloud, like we should, because it will lead to so much more like connection, growth, um, like morale. Like people will feel like better hearing stories, sharing stories, being confident in their own story.
Yeah,
Like authentic in that sense.
yeah.
So there's so many benefits to it within our space, and people do share their stories in certain ways, but there's not this kind of like collective strategy around it.
It could be made really fun as well. So, like, one of the, thank you. Oh, I just got a coffee brought to me. That's so
Oh,
nice. Delivery on point. So
yeah.
beautiful. Um, yeah, just I was chatting to, so my sister's partner, Josh, his friend, so he's in the defense force, and he was doing some work on deployment and came across this dude called Zimo. And Josh has told us about Zimo before, and he said, Lauren, you need to get Zimo on the podcast. And I said, why? Like, what's his deal? He said, well, everything he does has this really cool way of introducing himself, and the way that he tells stories, it changes. It's like he turned up one day to introduce himself and he just literally started rapping his story. Like, I think he's a white dude, just rapped it out. Another time he brought like a vision board and pictures, and he put it together in a way that made sense to him. Like, he drew a beach, and it was like, oh, what does that mean? It's like, the beach is my daughter because of blah, blah, blah. And then he had
Mm,
a drawing of like a dress, and they're like, well, what's that? And it's like, the dress brand is Zimmerman, and that's my last name. And then it like connected to all of this other stuff. And I think it
mhm.
would be fun for yourself, but like, your students as well, to connect with the way that they share it, and like not even looking at the person next to them that goes, oh, like that story's so cool. It's like, no, we're excited to hear your story because you have a way of, or like you have a quality that we don't have. Maybe you're the good listener, maybe you're the good speaker, maybe you're the good drawer, who knows.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I love all that. So did you get him on?
He's coming on, so he's gonna come on his 40th birthday on the 20th of June.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
so
Well, that'll be fun to listen to.
yeah, I'll keep you in the loop for that one. It's going to be super fun. So my birthday's close to his, but yeah, he goes on we're going to be talking about resilience, which will probably tie into the work that you're doing as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Um, which is just so cool. Could you talk about the 12 steps that are in the 12-step program? Because I've heard it a few times, but I'm not overly familiar with the steps that you actually go through.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, they're pretty similar across fellowships, and the thing with them is, there's like the program's kind of laid out and really open to interpretation, where like a lot of people kind of go through the steps or approach sponsorship or meeting attendance or, service work in different ways. So, anyone that talks about any version of the steps or like how it's worked for them, that's just, one instance. So I just wanted to preface it with that. They're kind of like broken up into sections. Like the first few steps are really, for me, were about like understanding that there was something out there like bigger than myself, and that like I kind of needed to let go of my own ego and like will to try and figure out addiction by myself. Like if that makes sense. So like the first step saying like we admitted that we were powerless over our disease, like that's what that's talking about. And then steps 2 and 3 are kind of about this like something greater than ourselves that are out there. And for some people it's, you know, it's the program itself. For other people, they have other definitions of what that power is. I don't really know if I could put mine like into words specifically, but that's kind of what that's about. And then, steps 4, 5, and 6 and 7 are kind of about like, okay, looking at what we've done in our life and like looking at like our relationships and behaviors and identifying like the patterns and seeing where like we have assets but where we have like opportunities to grow, and
Mm.
like becoming ready to have that power, like work in our lives and like be different, like actually work towards you know refining those assets and not acting on these defects of characters they're outlined in the steps. Then steps 8 and 9 are really about amends, like seeing, okay, we looked at all these patterns now, here's the people we've harmed, like we need to make amends in some way, to them directly or through how we're behaving in our lives. And then steps 10, 11, and 12 are kind of like everything we just talked about but ongoing, like day to day. Like step 10 is this regular inventory, like step 4 is this like kind of big inventory, step 10 is like, okay, let's do that regularly. Step 11 around prayer and meditation is kind of like, all right, you have this experience of recovery, kind of practicing through prayer and meditation to have this like, deeper understanding of it all. And then step 12 is really about giving back, being of service, carrying the message to someone else, which through storytelling, it gets done. So, and then you kind of like go through it again and it becomes different each time. But, that's kind of the best summary I guess I have in my head, just on a whim, if that makes sense.
That's so great. Like, it's so cool to hear the different, I guess, frameworks that people use, but they all essentially do filter to the same thing. Because in yoga, if we were to look at that framework, my mind was ticking with, like, if you've ever heard the word, the yamas and niyamas are
Hmm.
essentially like those principles where we analyze things within ourselves first. And it's like kind of going, what have I been doing, like around,
Yeah.
truthfulness, like all of that kind of stuff. What have I been doing? Blah, 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 blah. Analyze me first, me. And then it's like, now how do I take action and how do I continue to give back and serve? And like when you understand where you're coming from, you are going to serve the people that are around you. But you can't do that unless you really do excavate the work on yourself. And
Yeah.
so many people are scared to take ownership of that. And that's why I love what you're about, what you're a part of, because doing it in a team where you kind of can get perspective on your story and go, oh, like maybe my life isn't that bad, or maybe my story is worth
Hmm.
sharing. It's a very encouraging space to step into areas of work that you're in now. Like from what you've gone through, you've got a job. How cool is that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, spot on.
Yes. So you've given us that framework, you've spoke about your teachers. Being an introverted person, I can only assume that you're very much into like docos, movies, podcasts, books. is there any that you would highly recommend? It can be completely on topic or off topic. I don't mind. That's like oh, you must read this, Lauren.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I love that. So right now we're going through Brene Brown,
Mhm.
the Gifts of Imperfection. So that one's, I was listening to it earlier today. I like the books where the author reads, because I like hearing how the author wants the words to come out. You know, like the tone and cadence and everything. So that's been great. The current Surgeon General of the United States, Dr. Murthy, he has this book called Together. Like now, it came out right before COVID. I forget what this, like, the subtitle is, but it's a really good. I'm just trying to pull it up because we just read through that for our book group, like right before we were on this one. Together. I'm just trying to see the little
It's fine.
the healing power of human connection in a sometimes lonely world.
Healing power of human connection in a sometimes lonely world.
Yeah, so those two have been great. Movies, I don't know. The one actually that I watched recently that I thought was beautiful was a Disney movie called, I think it was called Soul. I don't
What?
know if you've, yeah, it's let me look it up to make sure.
Please. I want to get
Yeah,
into
yeah.
that.
Yeah, it was on Disney Plus. That one was, it's lit, like the concept is so amazing. It's literally uh following the story of like a human soul. And there's
Oh
the,
my
yeah,
gosh.
and there, yeah, and there's like this this dark place where the lost souls are if they became too obsessed or lost with like what they were doing in life, and then they need, to be brought out of that, and then they're bright again. And it's really a good movie to watch to like capture the essence of like, you know, being a human and going through this crazy thing called life. So I think that's what comes to mind. Yeah, I think
Have
those
you
are,
seen Inside Out? Does it have any
yeah,
like the match of
exactly
that?
like that.
Yeah,
It's exactly like that. Yeah.
cool. I love
I
that.
think it's a lot better. I think it's better.
Yeah,
Like Inside Out was like feelings, and but Soul's like a deeper version of Inside Out.
epic. I'm gonna get onto that. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Use your Sunday that way. You won't be
I
disappointed. Yeah.
actually think that is going to be Soul Sunday. Yeah,
Yeah. Yep.
it's happening.
Hashtag it. Yeah.
Hashtag I am now Oprah. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, you were so cool, dude. Yeah, when you just get that feeling with certain people where I know we could sit down and have like 25 cups of coffee and like just
Yeah.
chill and go be silly and joke around, but also hit the really like deep chords of
Hmm.
tell me everything about your life and I need to know
Yeah.
everything. Like I love going from that, and I love it when people have the ability to, I guess, keep
Yeah.
up with me because my mind's pretty like
Yeah.
but I yeah
Oh,
have
I identify.
yeah.
Yeah. I get it. I get it.
It's not that I don't remember, it's just that I'm so like
Yeah.
yeah,
Like, how
so
does this
many
work with
boxes.
that? How does that?
Yes.
Yeah. 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 No, I'm with you.
You were so cool. Oh, where can people find you, Tim? Like, we will wrap this up. And in terms of finding you to connect either personally or through the business
Hmm.
that you do, you are based in Georgia from memory. Atlanta. Are you in Atlanta, Georgia? Did I get that right or completely wrong?
That's where the association is registered, but I'm out west in California.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, they can go to the website collegiaterecovery.org, or they can find me on, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram,
Yeah.
anything like that.
Perfect. And how do you best like to be contacted in terms of connecting with people? Are you an email kind of guy, or are you I know social media can be a little bit hit and miss. Um,
Yeah, email is always the best. Yeah,
cool.
just like you did, you can send the message right through the website and I'll get that. Yeah, that's probably always the best.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to share with our viewers or our listeners in terms of things that are coming up, or any thing that you would like help with? Because I know that I really want to get you as part of more of the things that I'm doing moving forward, to even just like pop in and go, hey, can we donate some money here to 25 to Thrive? Because I think that has a really cool message. If you maybe just want to speak to the campaign itself, and yeah, we'll move forward from there.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the best thing is getting involved with, collegiate recovery, so if there's any ways to do that in Australia and we can help out, like that would be huge. That's probably the number one thing. Um, like you said, there's ways to donate, like that campaign. So that campaign actually we did it a couple years ago. It's still like open, but it's not like an active campaign for us. Like we just so April 15th, we had our most recent campaign, which was for Collegiate Recovery Day, like our big day each year. So the 25 to Thrive campaign, though, that was raising $25,000 to support students in recovery to help them thrive in their recovery. And that's kind of like the goal of that campaign. But yeah, any way to like volunteer time or donate always helps us quite a bit. The main thing I'll point out though, in June, the week of June 21st, is our national conference. Well, I guess kind of like global conference because we have people from outside the United States attend. And if folks from like Australia or whoever are tuning in, it's virtual this year, so folks can participate that way because of COVID. And even if you can't pay, there's a pretty generous scholarship form on the website, so people can fill that out if they want to jump into even just one session, or the recovery meetings or stuff like that, and be with all these different folks from across the country, but also a little bit across the globe.
Wow. I'm inspired by you, and I think that to watch someone who has gone through something, has put in the work and continues to still put in the work and give back, that's definitely, again, I'm assuming you're older than me. We might even be the same age, I'm not sure, but it's like I'm looking to people as to where the qualities I want to have when I continue to grow into myself. And you're certainly someone who, even in the brief time of meeting, I could tell when we were emailing that you were someone who I deeply respect and admire. So I'm excited to see how our relationship strengthens moving forward, and like just to continue to see what you do in your work, because I want to be able to help as many people as I can in their passion, in terms of
Yeah.
how can we direct the right people to you? How can we put you out there to not
Right.
just reach California, but let's get it to
Yeah.
Australia? Like, hit me up,
Yeah.
brother, if this is happening, because I will make it happen.
Yeah. No, I love that. Now I'm curious to now I need to know how old you are. I would have guessed mid-20s.
27.
Okay, 28. Me.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, so we're right there.
I'm
Yeah.
turning 28 this year. So when did you turn 28?
In August. So in like 4 months I'll be 29. Or a few months I'll be 29.
Yeah, definite old souls. I love it.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, it's so cool, isn't it? Because I think age is it's such a funny thing to say. Like, I get the mix of you look like a kid, but then when you chat to somebody, it's like you could be 100 years old. And I
Yeah.
just think age means nothing to me other than I love numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm right there with you. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God. I
Fun.
feel like we'll have to just like send some little messages or emails or something that'll just keep us inspired. And if you're someone who like writes or anything, just shoot stuff through, and I'm happy to pop up things about what you're doing on my blogs, and yeah, putting value out on social media, which is really my big intention of moving away from resistance there to actually how can I expand and add value, because it is a platform.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I'll definitely circle back on that. It's generous of you to offer that.
Of course, absolutely. There's people where you just feel that, and it's like it doesn't even feel like there's no question. It's just happening.
Yeah.
It's just a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I appreciate
Love
you,
it.
dude. I don't even know what time it is in California at the moment.
Yeah, 9:15 p.m.
Nine.
Saturday night.
Okay. It is time to clock off for you to get off some technology. I appreciate your time, your
Thank you.
wisdom,
Yeah, back at you.
Yeah, you're just a generous and beautiful soul. And if anybody is
Mhm.
going through anything in the areas that we've been speaking about in terms of recovery, addiction, going through big stuff, and you don't know where to reach out to, Tim has been overly generous in his time. In He'd either be
Mhm.
able to direct you to where you need to go, whether that's
Mhm.
detox or finding a center in your town to get you there. And if he doesn't know, I'm sure he has a team around him that can help assist you to get there.
Mhm.
So yeah, please do not feel like you're just the only one with your story. We all have our stories, we're all human, and we all have a need to share it and be loved and connected. So let's do it.
Perfect. Thanks, Lauren.
You're so welcome, dude.